Welcome, Christo Grozev.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Incredible investigation. First of all, how long have you been investigating the case of Jan Marsalek? And once you had the lead, what made you pick it up in the first place?
Well, in my particular case, I started the day after he fled to Russia because I had never heard the name Jan Marsalek or Wirecard even before. I used to do financial journalism, but I had stopped doing that. I was only focused on espionage and Russia operations. And in the summer of 2020, somebody called me and said, my colleague actually, Fidelius from Spiegel, called me and said, can we look into this guy who disappeared? And people think he's in Africa, some others think he's in the Philippines or Malaysia. Let's find him because nobody can track him down. So it took me about 2 weeks and we found him in Belarus and then in Russia. And then the whole story became a Russia plus Marsalek story for me, which obviously was of interest. And it took years after that to find out that actually while I was investigating him, he was also equally interested in me.
That is a strange coincidence for you. How did you feel when you found out about that?
I really had no idea until one day I was confronted by law enforcement. I was in New York in the beginning of 23, and I was on the way back to Austria, where my family and I lived for years. And I was told, you cannot go back to Austria because there's a team, a red team, waiting for you down there to kidnap you. And I said, you must be joking. I mean, no, it's a Russia-appointed team. We still don't know who's behind the team, but they're after you. And a couple of weeks later, I was told, actually, it's Jan Marsalek who is controlling these 6 Bulgarians who have been out to get you, and they were just arrested in London. So it was I was a hunter as a journalist, but at the same time, he was hunting me for real with a group of spies. It was a shock.
Mm-hmm. Take us through this hunt, if you will. How did you go about it? How do you find those leads? How do you research? How do you work?
Well, we work with data, and my colleagues from the inside and my colleagues from Spiegel, we have a team that is expanded with additional colleagues, such as in this case, we had Der Standard and CDF colleagues. But usually we work in a small team looking for clues, digital clues that can lead us to the next level. Now, with Jan Marsalek, there's one thing that always leads us to a clue, which is the women around him. I mean, it's always a woman around him that leads us to where he is and how he looks like. Mm-hmm. We started first with his first Russian girlfriend, Natalia Zlobina. We published the whole story 24. And then in 25, we started refocusing on his new identity because he had vanished from the face of the earth. And we again found his other new girlfriend that he started dating back in 21. She was his language teacher. She was teaching him Russian, and one thing led to another, and they became a couple. But at the same time, he started using her for intelligence operations on behalf of the Russian state. And it was tracking her and her travel that allowed us to identify a name, a Russian name that always was traveling alongside with her. And that name did not exist in reality. Mm. And we were able to get a photograph behind that name. It was Jan Marsalek with a new beard, with a new haircut, actually with a new hair implant, and a small change to his facial features, which may have been a plastic surgery. But there was no question it was him because the biometric comparison showed it was him. So again, a woman led us to him.
How much does artificial intelligence play a role for investigative journalism in general, but in this case in particular?
It does play a role because, again, the low-hanging fruit is to delegate a lot of the boring data crunching to artificial intelligence. Instead of taking one train manifest of passengers and another one and look for matching names or matching birthdays, you just throw that at AI and say, please do this for me. And within a second you get, oh, we have these same people and they're sitting next to one another. So this is really something that I used to waste hours or sometimes days doing manually. But at the same time, the bad guys are doing AI in a much more innovative and malign ways. And yesterday I was looking through chats that Jan Marsalek had exchanged with his spies, the Bulgarian spies that he had recruited. And he literally told them, we should take videos that are recorded by Christo Grozev and use AI to be trained based on those videos for deep fakes that we can use in the future to discredit him. So again, the bad guys are miles ahead or years ahead. We at least owe it to ourselves as journalists to use it in some way to make our work more efficient or faster.
How do you accrue that data? How do you get that? You can't just put in an online search.
Well, part of it you can. Part of it you can do, and you'll be amazed to know how much data fragments can be found on social media sites, on Instagram accounts, because people especially people who are in professions such as espionage or government, they think they're the hunters, that they will never be hunted. So they allow themselves things that usually their employees won't do. Their family members leave a lot of clues on Instagram and social media. So you can find a lot in these open accounts. Another thing that is unique mostly to Russia and corrupt and centralized states such as Russia, China, a little bit Iran, is that they control 100% of their citizens all the time. And they also corrupt, which allows for a market of trading such centralized data to exist. So in Russia, there are these data traders who actually work with corrupt FSB officers, corrupt policemen, corrupt members of the staff of a telecoms company, and they trade data. So when, in this particular case, I needed to go, we had a phone number that we knew belonged to the new Jan Marsalek under the identity of a non-existing Russian, Alexander Nelidov. We took that phone number, and I went to one of these data brokers, and I just said, I need to track the metadata for this number for the last 1.5 years. Sure, let me just check who will provide that to you. Within 3 days, we had the metadata for that phone. And yeah, it's something that it's ethical to do, in my view, only when you're sure that you're dealing with a criminal where governments are not willing to put in the necessary effort to track them down. And somebody needs to do it, and somebody needs to kind of shame governments into acting.
That's a good point. I mean, Jan Marsalek is one of the most hunted men in Europe. One of the biggest financial scandals in the history of Germany is credited to him. How were you able to find him and not the police and investigative authorities who are hunting him?
I don't have the answer. I can just imagine that none of them are too focused on this or want to find the truth, because if I'm able, with limited resources, with a team of 4 colleagues, and at a marginal cost, at a tiny cost of investment, governments, investigative authorities who have access to big data, to metadata, legally, without buying it on the black market, they should be able to do it. But over the last 2 years, I've noticed that no government really wants to get Jan Marsalek. I don't feel that they do. And I think this investigation and things like this will hopefully change that, because people will start asking why are the governments not doing that?
So you think it's less a lack of means, it's more a lack of will to really get Jan Marsalek?
Of course, there's regulatory restrictions that some governments, or most governments in Europe, there's the GDPR, there's the requirement not to spy on European citizens, which probably untie my hands a bit more than... but again, I mean, they're law enforcement. They have to find a way to replenish. They have access. They can get phone records. They can subpoena phone records. They can use German mobile operators to get roaming agreements to share data. They can do it in different ways than buying it on the black market. I think they are not focused and don't want to do it.
Could it be they don't want to do it because they know they can't get a hold of him anyway, since he's in Russia?
He does travel. We've proven that he travels to Ukraine. He travels to a zone in Ukraine where, if the German government had approached the Ukrainian government and shown to them that here, he's fighting against you, he's actually funding operations in Ukraine, and he's buying drones against you, and he's cooperating with China and North Korea, which we also see, he's confessing to all of these things in the chats with his spies. If Ukraine, for example, knew that there's a request from Germany, they would probably do their own contribution to trying to capture him. He travels to other countries as well. So I think Germany could have been much more active than wait for him to show up. Then again, I think he himself is running out of munition, to put it figuratively, for the Russian government. He was very useful before. I think now, with the failures, with the embarrassment that he caused Putin by being, his spy ring was caught, and 700,000 chats were made public, in which he referred to President Putin, not in very nice terms. He referred to other presidents in not very nice terms that are allies of Russia. I think the time may come when he's no longer welcome in Russia. So, yeah, I hope he's watching this show. And if I have a lot of experience in getting people in trouble in Russia out of Russia, if he gets them in trouble, he should just reach out and blink twice.
You think his days are numbered in Russia?
I do think it's only a question of the number.
What was Putin's interest in him to begin with? Why did he protect him?
That was easy in the beginning, because he was giving everything to the Russian security services for free. He was even funding their operations. Jan Marsalek was spending his own money, or rather money from Wirecard, to fund operations in Syria. He was sponsoring small units of fighters in Syria. Of course, Russia would welcome such help, especially when it comes with somebody who is ideologically aligned with them. And when the war started, then he was useful in a different way. He had access to Chinese business contacts. He knew how to launder money. And Russia needed really to avoid sanctions. So he was very useful for that with his financial network to avoid sanctions, or at least to consult them for that. He was procuring drones for them. He was exchanging back-channel ideas with North Korea and with China. He was very useful. He was also useful. He made himself useful by filling in the gap that Russia had at the time, which was they were almost out of spies around the world, because more than 150 diplomats, Russian diplomats in quotation marks, had been kicked out of Europe. And a lot of spies could no longer travel because journalists like us had disclosed them. So Russia needed to fill in the gap. And Jan Marsalek shows up and says, I can actually hire Austrians, I can hire Bulgarians, I can hire Slovak people, and they can do the work for you. So over all these years, probably about 10 years, he was extremely useful to Russia. But again, the time comes when he would know too much and he's no longer useful. And that's why I think his days are numbered.
This case is only one of many that you investigate and research, and a lot of them have to do with Russia. You seem to have specialized in investigating stories concerning Russia and knowing how President Putin deals with foes and with opposition voices. Are you not afraid to literally poke the bear?
Afraid is a subjective feeling. I don't have that fear, but I have an awareness that Russia wants to get me and Putin wants to get me. And if we trust Jan Marsalek, who wrote himself to one of his proxies, Putin personally hates Grozev, and that's why we need to get him. So I'm aware of that. But that risk is maximized and it cannot go higher. So I'd rather continue investigating and contributing something to knowledge, to transparency, because again, there's no way out of that. There's no way to diminish the risk, unless I become an agent of Russia, which will never happen. There's no way to get out of a kill list.
But are you not afraid because of that fact that you're on that list?
Well, I'm afraid for my family. I'm afraid for my kids because, not because they would target my family, but because they make mistakes. And in one of the operations, it's already in the court files, so I can speak about it, when Marsalek sent people into my apartment in Vienna to steal what he thought was my work laptop so he could deliver this present to Putin with all the sources that he would find there. They took the wrong laptop, fortunately. It was completely empty. But they broke into my apartment thinking it's empty, but my son was in his room at his computer with headphones on. And just imagine what would have happened if it walked out while they were robbing my apartment. So things like this cause me to really be scared. But for myself, I'm not scared. I also have a new way of living, which is unpredictability. And that's the only thing that can defend you from people like that.
That's exactly my point. How does that affect your private life?
I really cannot promise anybody that I'll be able to see them on Friday, that I'll be able to meet them tomorrow. I have to decide at the last minute where I travel and whom I see. So again, I've been advised by people formerly in the Russian security services that they cannot react very fast. So as long as you're one step ahead of them, you can be relatively safe.
You're taking great risks for a cause that is important to you. What motivates you?
I think it probably goes back to my childhood when I grew up in Bulgaria, an unfree country at the time. My parents were very free minds, and they kept telling me, well, if you want to get the truth, listen to Radio Free Europe, listen to Deutsche Welle, listen to international radio stations. And I grew up listening to that. And I was so angry when my classmates were brainwashed by state propaganda. And I just wanted to kind of contribute to them breaking the lock of that false information. And I would keep telling them what I had heard the previous night on Radio Free Europe. And I think that never left me, kind of trying to tell people, no, the truth is this one. So have a look here.
Christo Grozev, thank you so much for your time and for your important work.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Du hast das Video bis zu Ende geschaut? Dann kannst du auch ein Abo dalassen.